So, what do you want to talk about?
Well, today I want to talk about a franchise and not a
Mm,
food franchise, a
mm,
movie franchise. And actually, probably even bigger than movies because I know it's in books and graphic stuff. But today I want to talk about Predator.
very
Yeah,
nice.
it was always been a fan of Predator, but I guess I don't know what it was. I was kind of in the mood for something, and I think if I remember correctly at the time, I was trying to see movies because I was studying them for some ideas I was working on, and I just wanted to see how certain things played out. And I was thinking about it, I thought, oh, well, the Predator would be. And I thought, I never gave the Predator series that much love. I mean, I love the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, the original started it all. It was great. But I guess because of the way it was played out, it was always kind of like it was almost comical,
Hmm.
in a way. So it didn't lend the sort of the horror credence that like, Alien had or something like that. So I enjoyed it, but I was I guess it never really sank in deep with me. So when I
Hmm.
started thinking about it, I was gonna go, I'll watch Predator. But then I see how I wrote my list here because I had it in order. So what it was I started, it was Predators,
Hmm.
which is further down the line. And
Yeah,
I
that's
had
one of
seen
the
it
more recent
before.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah. But I couldn't really recall how it all played out. And I thought, well, maybe I'll watch it again and see if I liked it because I could not remember if I liked it or not. And I thought, well, if I'm going to watch a Predator, I want to watch something that's more fresh. So I watched it and I actually enjoyed it more than I remembered enjoying it. And I thought, this was actually pretty cool concept. And the
Hmm.
whole Predator thing was really interesting. And I guess the ending kind of, I guess, opened itself up to other stuff. And I guess it left me wanting more. So then I went back to chronologically what would be the first movie, which is actually probably the last movie that made, was Prey,
Hmm.
which was another really cool concept. So I watched
Hmm.
those back to back, and they were completely different. And I just thought, what a world this whole Predator thing is,
Hmm.
and what you can do. These guys were dropped on a planet for hunting, and then in Prey, they took it a totally different direction where it was kind of the early days where they were arriving, and they were going against, I guess, North American indigenous tribe,
Hmm.
and they had I don't know what you call it. I mean, she was the heroine, but she was a complicated character, someone trying to prove herself. So there was a
Yeah,
lot
well,
of
she was kind of
depth.
trying to exist outside her defined like normal role, right?
Yeah,
She was trying to be something more than her tribe or her society necessarily wanted
expectations.
her or expected her to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was really interesting because it was a whole different part of the movie, where you're seeing the character's growth.
Hmm.
And then of course you have this predator. Um, so that those two were it just gave me sort of this insatiable interest in the whole predator thing. So then I went back, did the Arnold Schwarzenegger version, and
Hmm.
then watched the second one, Predators 2, with Danny Glover,
Hmm.
which wasn't the greatest rendition of Predator. It was bad.
Yeah, I
Lots
mean
of
that's
action and
definitely
shooting,
a low point in the franchise, I would say. Yeah.
except for the ending.
The ending is awesome though. Yeah.
Yeah, because the ending was more awesome
Having
because
seen
Prey came
Prey.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then of course they came out with the franchise. They brought together the Alien versus Predator, two
Hmm.
movies.
Hmm.
And I didn't have a chance to watch it because those are already four. So that's a lot of hours right there.
Hmm.
But I'll have to check out the Alien versus Predator movies to see how they fared. But yeah, it got me thinking about the whole Predator thing. There's the Predator, which I believe I've seen, but
Yeah, I was not a fan of that one.
I haven't. I don't. It doesn't really stick with me much. So
Yeah.
to be a completionist, I guess I'll probably watch it at some point. But I'll watch the two Alien versus Predator ones first before whenever I get a chance.
Yeah.
Do you
I
like the
think
Predator series?
for me, it probably goes Prey and the original. I have a hard time like putting those in order as far as like
Yeah,
which one's my favorite because they're so radically different from each
yeah,
other. Like I think Prey is a really excellent, well done movie, but
yeah,
it's tonally so different from the original.
yeah,
And I really do love the original with like very strong nostalgic feelings for the original. So it's hard
yeah,
to not like want to put that one on top.
yeah.
But I would kind of put those two like up on a pedestal by themselves. And then I actually think that that Adrian Brody one, Predators, is actually one of the better sequels. I might put that one like, you know, third on my like top tier list for Predator movies. But yeah, Predator 2, The Predator, the Alien versus Predator movies. Um, I think it's kind of hit and miss, kind of like diminishing returns at a certain point with some of those other ones. But
Yeah.
there's definitely been some real highs in that series, and it's very cool that some of the more recent films in the series, like Prey, are as good as they are. Uh, I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's just well, I don't know. The whole I'd love to see, you know, a movie that takes us to their home world. And I'm sure it'll probably come at some point, or maybe they don't want to ruin the mystique, but to see a movie where see what how they became what they became, or are they like
Mhm.
Klingons warring tribes kind of thing?
Mhm.
Um, it's
Yeah, I'm
because
trying to
yeah,
remember if there's something of because there is a bit of I think there's a bit of that in one of the Alien versus Predator movies. I think you do get to see, if I recall correctly, a bit of the Predator homeworld, or at least like more of what's going on with the Predators,
yeah,
as I recall.
but yeah.
But it's been a while since I've seen those, and I think I've only seen two of those once. So they're parts of the franchise that I'm kind of least familiar with.
Yeah, yeah. No,
I'm
I
actually
just
probably more familiar with some of the video game offshoots, right? Like the Aliens versus Predator video games and the Predator video games and stuff like that, because there's been quite a few of those as well.
I've never played any of those.
Oh, they're excellent. That
Really?
first Alien versus Predator game is a true classic, I would say, as far as like first person games go, because that was where you got to play either as the alien, the predator, or the space marine. And so you'd have
Okay.
like these three-way battles, right? Where the aliens and the predators and the space marines would be like going at it. So you'd have like people playing as aliens, like running up the walls and across the ceilings and stuff and pouncing on
Yeah.
people. And then the predators with the thermal vision and the lasers and all that stuff. And then the space marines just kind of freaking out doing their thing. The,
Hmm.
that first game was absolutely excellent. And there's been some good sequels too, for sure.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's funny because it was, as I said, maybe it was because it was sort of the tongue-in-cheek, comical, comic bookish first version with Arnold, which of course everyone loves. Well, maybe not
Hmm.
everyone, but should love because it's great and it started it all.
Hmm.
But I guess it just the whole when you see a bunch of them together, the whole mythos of it,
Hmm.
and I was like, it's the Predator is such a cool character,
Hmm. Well, and to
and I
your
got really
point,
into it.
I think one of the things that really works so well about that first movie especially if that's the one you see first, is it really doesn't tell you too much about the predator, right? There's so much
Yeah.
mystique there about like, what is this thing? What's going on? What's happening? Because I mean, when you watch the first Predator movie for the first time, you don't even necessarily know what's happening for like a good chunk of the
Yeah.
movie, right? It's like we know in retrospect, right, what's going on. But I remember sitting in the theater for the first time seeing that when I was a kid, going like, oh my God, like this is insane, right? Like what is even happening here? It's like you think about that first movie now in retrospect, and you look at it through at it in a completely different way now, knowing what the predator is going into it versus like what it's like to experience that having no idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to see it in a theater
Oh
is
yeah.
definitely cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that first Predator movie is like peak 80s action movie, right? Like that's I don't know that there's many 80s action movies that could top that one, right?
Yeah.
If, at best they could equal it, I think.
You wonder, we should have an episode. It's like who would survive you know, a gang battle? The Expendables
Mm.
or
Dutch's crew from Predator.
Dutch's crew, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were a
Yeah.
badass crew.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean that it's so iconic, right? And again, it's one of those things that's hard to really put into perspective, right? Because if you see it now, you're going to see it through the lens of the world such as it is now, and it maybe isn't going to hit the same way that it hit back in the day. But like
Yeah.
at the time, like that was such a stunningly awesome movie, right? Like it was
Yeah.
that was I think I've mentioned it on the show previously, right? Like that was my first R-rated movie when I was a kid. That was my first
Okay.
like, you know, big like theater experience was like, going to see that in the theater for the first time. So it like it's got a special place in my heart for sure. That I think would be like very hard to unseat. Uh, yeah, that's a banger for sure.
Yeah. As I said, I enjoyed it and it brought back a lot of, nostalgia from the past. And I thought, well, people who may have only seen one and one of the lower down the ladder ones and said, I'm not going to watch them again. I want to bring, shout some love to it and go, check out these other ones. They're good. Learn
Hmm.
about the whole, you know, background and mythos of the Predator.
Hmm.
And if you watched it a long time ago, go back and relive those fun days.
Yeah, definitely worth revisiting for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
happy I did. It was as I said, I wasn't sure how I was going to take it, but I got right into it. Started watching them back to back almost.
nice.
So Predators, check that out if you haven't already.
Do it. So speaking of nostalgia, I was going to talk about something that I did purely out of nostalgia, which is checked out the new X-Men animated series on Disney Plus, which for those of you who aren't familiar or know what's up with that, there was a animated television series, basically a Saturday morning cartoon back in the 90s called X-Men, and obviously based on the comics. And what I think a lot of people largely consider to be one of the best animated series ever. Like I know I've seen a bunch of lists over the years where people kind of try to say like what are the best cartoons or what are the best animated shows of all time, and that X-Men series from the 90s often makes those lists, if not tops them. And You can definitely see why, and definitely see like the influence that it had on like an entire generation of kids. I know like the reason I ended up watching it back in the day was my sister was kind of in like the prime age range for it when it came out, and she was very much into the comics and stuff at the time, and so that was like a huge kind of bonding thing that we had. Watching that together and kind of like talking about it and experiencing it. So in a similar fashion, when this revival series came out, which interestingly is set in 1997, which is why it's called X-Men 97, and literally picks up from exactly where the old animated series left off when it was canceled. So they brought back a bunch of the original voice actors and basically tried to recreate the animation style of the time, and like the dialogue and the tone and the like historical context of the time, and literally just had it pick up as if it had never been canceled, which I thought was like a really stunning attention to detail thing that I was like pretty impressed with. And watching the new show, it really is amazing the amount of detail and effort that they put into really recapturing like the tone and feel and vibe of the original show, while still like modernizing it and bringing it up to date in terms of like the animation quality and technology that's available now. But of course, the other thing that it does is because it is continuing that old storyline, it gives a lot of people closure on what was going on with that, because people may not be aware, if they're not familiar with the original show, that it basically ended on like a massive cliffhanger, right? So there was like this major event that occurs that never got resolved. And so getting to see that get resolved like 30 years later was pretty cool, for sure. And having seen the whole series, at least this first season of it that they've released at this point, it was definitely true to the original and very complimentary of the original, and I think like really exceptionally well done. And also, I think did a very good job of bringing it into the modern era throughout the course of that first season, in a way where you really get to see how they paid homage to the original while still like updating it and bringing it into the current standards and current like sort of taste of like a modern audience. So really, really enjoyed it. Really would highly recommend it. Obviously, if you're already a fan of the previous series, you're probably already well aware of it and probably already watched it, but good
Is
times.
there anywhere that's showing the original? Because
Yeah,
you
you can see
mentioned
the
it.
original on Disney Plus as well. In
Oh,
fact, I
okay.
went back and watched some episodes of the original just to kind of refresh my memory on it a little bit and kind of remind
Okay.
myself of it, of certain things. And again, that just really reminded me of what a good job they did, like making the new one match up with it.
Hmm. How many seasons was the original?
Five, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it
How
ran
many
for a pretty long
episodes?
time. Yeah, and
Like
then yeah.
10 to 20 episodes a season, or
Yeah, somewhere around there, like at least like 13 or 15 a season, I think. Yeah.
so lots to catch up on.
Yeah. Although it was a half hour show. Um,
Ah, okay.
so, when you cut commercials out and all that sort of thing, they go by pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things that I always found really fascinating about that show, because obviously I was already an adult by the time that show came out, and
Mhm.
so I was experiencing it through that lens, right? Because my sister is 7 years younger than me, right? So she was watching it as a teenager, and I was watching it as an adult when it was new. And the thing that I was always really impressed by with that show was how it was crafted in a way where it would be equally appealing and interesting to an adult as it would be to its target audience, right? It had there were a lot of things about that show that were very adult and very sophisticated, especially for like the time that it was made. I think like you can definitely see how that show really inspired a lot of the more like modern, kind of mature, kind of sophisticated animated shows that followed it for sure.
Now I can't remember, when did the first X-Men movie come out?
So that would have been late 90s into the 2000s is when the X-Men movies came out. So like shortly after the animated series got canceled was when they
So
started doing the movies.
So the animated was basically the first of it all, other than I guess the original comics, or
Yeah, I mean, I think you would see X-Men appear in like some Spider-Man cartoons and stuff like that back in the day. Like I
yeah,
definitely remember Iceman being in a Spider-Man cartoon in the 80s. That was like my first time, I think, seeing an X-Man in a cartoon. Well,
right,
they didn't portray him as an X-Men
yeah,
back then, right? It was he was just hanging out with Spider-Man. Like they didn't really play up the whole X-Men thing back then. Um, but yeah, I think that animated series really did a lot to solidify and ingrain like the Marvel um, franchise and universe, metaverse into like a whole generation's heads, right? Like in a way
yeah,
that it maybe hadn't been previously to that. Um, I mean, you hear kids from that generation talk about how that was what they played in the playground, right? Like they'd watch that show and then go
yeah,
pretend to be like Wolverine and Gambit and Storm and Cyclops or
yeah.
whatever, right? Like that was like the impact that it had.
Hmm. Now with the original animated series, when it starts, does it
Mhm.
sort of are they all together, or does it show how they formed as a group, or
So it starts with them all together.
okay,
And what they do is they have like some new characters, some new like younger characters come
hmm,
in to kind of play the roles that the original characters would have been when they were younger, right? So at the point where the animated series starts, like Scott and Jean Grey and Beast and all the original X-Men are like the teachers now, right? Like they're
yeah,
like they've already like been through the school and are like out acting as like agents in the field at that point.
okay.
But then they bring a few new characters in to, well, specifically one character in to kind of act as the student or the the new blood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, I have a ton of nostalgia for that one because like I say, it was kind of like a bonding experience for me and my sister, like watching it
Yeah,
back in the day. Um, but I would say like if you're just a comic fan or you're an X-Men fan or like a Marvel fan, like that's going to be interesting to you at least on some level, I think. And then depending on how much you end up appreciating, some of the subtleties and the nuances of it, you may enjoy it even more.
yeah, because I've seen all the movies. That's
Mhm.
the only thing I worry about because I never watched it really as
Mhm.
a cartoon
Well, I
or
will
animated.
say some of the characters in the movies, I think, get horribly mistreated. Like those X-Men movies from the late 90s and early 2000s,
Yeah,
absolutely like butchered Rogue's character, I think, in a way that the animated series did not, right? Like she's a much better, more interesting, more like cool character in the animated show than she ever
hmm,
was in the movies, for example.
yeah. Well, I guess you can only do so much in the movies with that kind of stuff. So yeah, it'd probably be interesting to see the animated
Mhm.
version. And I got Disney, so it doesn't
Yeah,
cost me nothing.
yeah, there you go.
Well, that's a big
But
commitment. It's like five seasons of that, and they've only
plus the
what? They've
new season, yeah, which
only
is which
what?
is like another 13 episodes or so. Yeah.
Uh,
And I think
like I
that's
said,
the episodes from the new season are a bit longer because they're
okay,
not they're not formatted to have commercials, right? So they're like, I think they're actually 30 minutes long
okay.
or longer. So yeah, I don't know if you could just start with the new series. It might be a little confusing. And you'd also be kind of missing out on a lot of context for like this because it is an ongoing story. You'd
Right.
definitely be
Well, yeah. Be like coming in the middle of it, or
yeah,
the
you'd
two
be missing
thirds.
out on a lot just starting with the new one. As cool as the new one is, like I think a lot of what makes the new one so cool is how effectively it ties into the old one. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
I'd recommend at least checking out the old one a little bit before jumping into the new one.
Yeah. Well, I definitely watched the old one first
Mhm.
because I'm a completionist.
Yeah,
I
nice.
started at the beginning and worked my way through.
Yeah, nice.
So,
Yeah. Uh,
hmm.
yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about this time. Anything else you have on your mind?
Nope, nope. If you've got like bazillion hours that you're looking to kill,
Yeah.
watch the X-Men series on Disney and
Mhm.
the Predator, and literally just lock yourself in a room and you'll be gone for like a month or
Yeah, we'll
so.
see you guys in a year.
Yeah, you can. When you watch them all, get back to us on it.
Yeah, nice.
So don't tell us that we never give you any good tips. They got two good series to follow.
Pro tips abound.
Exactly.